Good evening. When I started defending the Japanese Unification Church some 12 years ago, I was told about the deprogramming of its believers that was recurrently occurring in Japan. Numerous accounts were given of families abducting and confining their kin until they would recant their faith for months, sometimes for years. Some professional deprogrammers would step in during confinement to forcefully persuade the believers that the Unification Church beliefs were contrary to the Bible. This practice, which reminds us of heresy trials and persecutions, was done with a tacit approval and refusal to intervene from the authorities, be it police or justice. Around 4,300 believers were subjected to deprogramming over 40 years in Japan. After being requested by the United Nations Human Rights Committee in 2014 to put an end to this practice, Japan pursued its fight against the Church in a reinvented form. The fruits of deprogramming are now being harvested by state authorities through the accumulation of tort cases initiated by deprogrammed members against the Church to reach the final goal of its dissolution. Who made all that happen? The Network of Lawyers Against Spiritual Sales, an association of far-left and atheistic obedience lawyers with the stated purpose of eliminating the Unification Church due to its early stance against communism. Those lawyers, who were sometimes advising families to resort to deprogramming in the first place, incited the members who finally recanted their faith and their families to sue the Church for damages. With their reasoning based on consumer law, they persuaded the courts to consider religious donations as commercial matters and the soliciting of donations as quote-unquote evangelical brainwashing. Following the shooting of Prime Minister Abe in July 2022 by a man who resented Abe's sympathy for the Church, scapegoating and hate speech flourished in the media. Riding this wave, the government filed for dissolution of the Church, alleging that it had caused serious harm to public welfare due to the various tort cases it had lost. In all these adverse tort rulings, the courts based their decisions on an alleged violation of social norms. But what are social norms in the area of religious beliefs and practices? In a country where materialistic and atheistic lobbies are at work? Well, those social norms in Japan today include where official guidelines are issued for the protection of children and mention that making a child participate to religious activities is a form of child abuse. Alerted by the Jehovah's Witnesses, 4 UN special rapporteurs have issued an open letter to the Japanese authorities to express their concern about those guidelines. Now, based on biased tort cases, the Japanese authorities fight for dissolution of the Church, accusing it of having seriously harmed public welfare. But the UN Human Rights Committee has consistently urged Japan to stop using public welfare as a justification to limit freedom of religion or belief. Now, the government went further to enact a new law to criminalize so-called unjust solicitation of donations, which sanctions the vague and arbitrary concept of infringement of free will. This law has been announced as being especially designed for the Unification Church, but it could undoubtedly be applied against other targeted denominations in the future. Now, this situation needs urgent attention. Japan is a beautiful and liberal country, but it needs to be reminded of its commitments to respect freedom of religion or belief. Thank you for your attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Reverend Tomohiro Tanaka, President of the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification in Japan, translating Mr. Shunsuke Uotani, Secretary General, UPF Japan.
はじめに、ワシントン近郊で1月29日に起きた航空機事故の犠牲者に対して深い哀悼の意を表します。
First of all, I'd like to express my deepest condolences to the victims of the plane crash that occurred near Washington, D.C. on January 29th.
IRF サミット2025で日本の世界平和統一家庭連合を代表しお話しできることを光栄に思います。
It is an honor to speak on behalf of Family Federation for World Peace and Unification Japan at the IRF Summit 2025.
しかし本日、私は民主主義国家である日本で起こっている魔女狩り的宗教弾圧について話さなければならないことを大変に残念に思います。
Today, I'm deeply saddened to have to speak about the witch-hunt-like religious persecution that is taking place in Japan, a democratic nation.
ご存知のように、私たち家庭連合は、安倍晋三元首相殺害事件後、メディアと、そして政府から激しい攻撃を受けてきました。
As you know, the Family Federation has come under intense attack from the media and government following the assassination of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe.
そして、歪んだ報道に屈した岸田前首相は、家庭連合との関係断絶を宣言し、解散命令請求を裁判所に出したのでございます。
Then, succumbing to the distorted media reporting, former Prime Minister Kishida declared that he was severing tie with the Family Federation and filed a request in court for a dissolution order.
2022年の安倍首相暗殺事件以降、家庭連合の会員たちは大きな苦しみの中におります。
Since the assassination of Prime Minister Abe in 2022, members of the Family Federation have been experiencing great suffering.
私は日本政府は越えてはならない一線を越えたと思っております。事実、家庭連合は解散理由になる刑事事件を一件も起こしたことがありません。
I believe that the Japanese government has crossed a line that should never be crossed. The fact is that the Family Federation has not committed any criminal offenses that could be ground for dissolution.
それで岸田前首相は解散命令の理由に民法による不法行為を持ち込みました。この判断は一夜にして彼によって決定されました。
So, former Prime Minister Kishida cited civil tort as a reason for the dissolution order. This decision was made by him overnight.
さらに、裁判所での解散命令請求審理は閉会審理であり、密室で行われます。国民には公開されません。我々は公開裁判を受ける権利すらないのです。
Furthermore, the hearing for the dissolution order in court is a closed hearing and takes place behind the closed doors. It is not open to the public. We do not even have the right to a public trial.
それで、このままでは全ての宗教団体が解散の危機にさらされるという宗教人の声が上がり始めました。事実、現在日本の信教の自由は空前の灯火なのであります。
So religious people began to speak out because if things continued as they were, all religious organizations would be in danger of being dissolved. Currently, religious freedom in Japan is hanging by a thread.
実際、家庭連合会員への拉致監禁、強制改宗の被害者は4300人以上を数えます。
In fact, more than 4,300 members of the Family Federation have become victims of deprogramming.
ご参席の皆様、日本の民主主義とその基礎である信教の自由は、1945年の第二次大戦の敗戦後、アメリカによってもたらされました。
Distinguished attendees, democracy and religious freedom as its foundation were brought to Japan by the United States after Japan's defeat in World War II in 1945.
その信教の自由が危機に瀕しているのです。80年後の今年、もう一度アメリカから信教の自由を学び、この危機を克服しなければならないと思っています。
That religious freedom is now in danger. I believe that we must overcome this crisis by once again learning about religious freedom from America 80 years later.
皆様のご理解とご支援を得て、日本の信教の自由と民主主義の危機を克服していく決意です。ご清聴ありがとうございました。
With your understanding and support, we are determined to overcome the crisis of religious freedom and democracy in Japan. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much.